Innovation is something which all organisations see as their future. One of our competitors, Ernst & Young, did a study of over 4,000 annual reports and found that every single one of them said that innovation was going to be the key to their future. What I think people are missing an awful lot of the time, though, is that they talk an awful lot about innovation, but they hardly ever talk about creativity. And the thing is that creativity is the gateway to innovation. Creativity is about the generation of ideas. Innovation is around the exploitation of those ideas, making those ideas into commercial reality. So I guess one of the questions is, why don't people talk about creativity? And I think it's because they often confuse creativity with being a bit wacky. So, you kind of see advertising agencies which are creative and everything's painted in primary colours and they do kind of odd things with sofas here and there and all that kind of stuff. And people kind of think, well, that isn't really us, and so they don't go there. But I don't think you have to be wacky to be creative. I think there's a lot of things that HR can do to build a culture where creativity can thrive and then lead into innovation. Creativity has a number of different sources, but there are kind of really three key sources of creativity. One is the random collision of ideas. So you have a kind of half-baked idea, which you might even not know you have. I've also got a half-baked idea in the back of my head. We have a conversation and suddenly your half-baked idea and my half-baked idea come together and make something that's worthwhile. And people, many organisations set out to create environments in which those random collisions take place. So Pixar, which was the company that made Toy Story and so on, under Steve Jobs, when they moved to a new building, Steve Jobs ensured that there was a huge atrium in the middle of it, and he did everything to ensure that people went into the atrium and therefore met each other, because he wanted the technicians and the animators and the business people to meet each other and exchange ideas in the hope that you would get something out of that. In science, many of the best ideas now come at the interface of different disciplines, where chemical engineering meets astrophysics or something like that, and you often find it's those interfaces where the ideas come about. So random collisions are pretty important. The second area is around diversity. It's around having people with different ideas and different experiences, so that when you get those kind of random collisions, they turn into something quite useful. And outsiders to organisations are very powerful in generating ideas. So there is an organisation called Innocentive, which is a kind of website, which was set up by Eli Lilly. And they did it because they found that quite often their well-funded research departments were stumped. They couldn't come up with a solution. They initially asked people in the company, and they found that people outside the research teams could often come up with the ideas. And they thought, well, okay, let's see if we can do this more broadly. And they set up Innocentive as a charity, and companies can post technical problems on it with a prize for people who can find a solution. What you find with it is that the most bizarre and unexpected people come up with the answers. Getting outsiders involved in things, different people, diversity is another key part of it. And the other bit, I think, is creating an environment in which people feel that they can put forward ideas. An awful lot of organisations stifle and crush creativity by having rigid hierarchies, by having processes that stifle debate, processes that avoid random collisions of ideas. They also make people work all day and don't provide any opportunity for people to kind of shoot the breeze and chat, which is where you kind of get that creativity from. I think one of the first things to do is to stop stopping it, and then you can start thinking about some of the positive things. There are a number of positive things which HR directors can play quite a big part in. First of all, we can try as far as possible to ensure that the physical environment supports opportunities for exchanging ideas. So ensuring that there are common areas. eBay, for example, offers free breakfast for everybody. Not just to make sure they get there on time, but also because over breakfast people can talk and exchange ideas, you meet people from different parts of the organisation. When I worked in the city years back with Morgan Renfrew, a very kind of traditional organisation but hugely creative, we used to have a free lunch, and the same kind of thing happened. Anybody could sit with anybody and you could exchange ideas. Creating the physical environment is part of it. The next thing is ensuring that you have some diversity in the workforce. And I don't just mean diversity in the usual sense of gender and ethnic origin and so on, but diversity of thinking, because that's what you're going to need for to generate ideas. You need to build a culture that values creativity and is willing to accept challenges. Quite often, new ideas are challenging. They appear to be criticising what went before. And if you're full of taboos and shibboleths and things like that, then you discourage people from putting forward ideas. Another very simple way of doing it is to ensure that when you construct teams and project teams, that you construct those effectively to promote ideas. Research in the United States, looking at the teams that wrote Broadway shows, found that teams that had never worked together were pretty unsuccessful. Teams where all of the members had worked together were moderately successful, but the most successful, by a factor of 2.5, were teams where the core had worked together before, but there were outsiders, new people joining that team. Now, many organisations have a real problem with outsiders. They say, oh, can't get outsiders, where do we get outsiders from? Well, the answer is that actually every organisation is full of outsiders. It's just that we don't always call them outsiders. We often call them young people. And actually, if you get some of those people involved in things, then you satisfy that criteria. And young people are often much more creative, not because they are inherently more creative, but because they act as the outsider that kind of creates that spark, brings that idea, brings that challenge, is able to see the wood for the trees because they are inexperienced and an outsider.